when a maid becomes a voice of justice. Even billionaires fall. This is the true story they hoped you'd never hear. Welcome to my YouTube channel, No Justice Nation. Let's dive in. No one expected the quiet maid from East Atlanta to be the center of a scandal that would shake Wall Street, divide public opinion, and leave a trail of shattered reputations in its wake. No one expected the black billionaire who built his empire from nothing, hailed as a symbol of pride and perseverance of the community, to be caught in a web of secrets that would eventually land in a courtroom under a storm of scrutiny. But what the world would soon discover was a love affair. Yes, but not just of passion and betrayal. It was an affair drenched in manipulation, lies, and ultimately, the terrifying power of influence when justice is pushed to the edge. His name was Elijah Eli Bishop, a name that resonated across corporate America. At just 38 years old, Eli had become one of the youngest black billionaires in the country. Born in the heart of Baltimore, he had risen from food stamps and foster homes to tech mogul and philanthropic icon. His story was the American dream redefined, and he lived it unapologetically, behind the high walls of his $25 million estate in the Hamptons, where he escaped from the eyes of media and business rivals. Eli kept his life carefully compartmentalized. No scandals, no leaks. Everything about him was managed, until her name was Leanna Green, a maid, just 24 years old, no criminal record, no formal college education, just a young woman from a poor neighborhood trying to survive by cleaning homes she'd never be able to afford. She was hired through a third-party cleaning agency that serviced high-profile clients. For nearly 2 years, she worked quietly in the background of Eli Bishop's life, dusting off awards that celebrated his brilliance, scrubbing floors that carried his power, folding the designer sheets on the beds of men who lived in a different universe. No one knew when it began, not even Liana. The looks turned to longer stares. The stares turned to lingering conversations. The conversations turned to something more. At first, it was subtle. She'd find small notes tucked beneath her cleaning supplies. Simple things like, "Thank you for your hard work." But then came the gifts. A bracelet, then a pair of designer shoes, a $5,000 cash envelope. And then came the night it all changed. It was a stormy Friday evening. Eli had canceled his meetings and stayed home, unusually present. He invited Liana to stay longer, claiming the roads were too dangerous to drive back in the rain. She hesitated, but Eli insisted. He ordered food. They drank wine. And according to Liana, that was the first night it became physical. The first night of many. But this wasn't a love story. Not in the traditional sense. Because while Liana believed something deep was developing between them, Eli never once introduced her to anyone in his circle. He kept her in the shadows, cloaked in secrecy. And eventually, the cracks began to show. She told her closest friend, a childhood companion named Ava, about the affair. She even shared texts, voice messages, and one blurry photo she took of Eli asleep in bed. Ava warned her, "Be careful. These kinds of men don't love women like us. They use them." Liana didn't listen. 6 months into the affair, Liana discovered she was pregnant. She didn't panic, not at first. In fact, she felt this could be her moment of transformation, the child of a billionaire, a future secured. She expected Eli to respond with support, even if reluctantly. But what happened next would change everything. When she told Eli about the pregnancy, he didn't get angry, not at first. He became distant, cold. The next day, she received a notice from the agency that she was no longer assigned to his property. Just like that, she was erased. She tried to call. No answer. She texted. Silence. She emailed. Nothing. Weeks passed. Her belly grew. So did her anger. Then came the letter, delivered by a man in a black suit, a confidentiality agreement, with a 6-figure hush payment attached. In exchange, she was to sign away any paternity claims and remain silent forever. She refused. And that's when her nightmare truly began. She was followed. Her apartment was broken into. Nothing stolen, but her laptop and a box of photos were missing. Her phone was tapped. Liana filed a police report, but with no hard evidence and no witnesses, the case went nowhere. She posted cryptic messages online, shared a few texts from Eli anonymously, but the media didn't care. They dismissed her as a clout chaser, another young woman trying to bring down a powerful black man with a lie, until the audio leaked. A voice recording, captured by Liana without Eli's knowledge, in which he admitted to the affair. You think I can just go public and say I knocked up the maid? You have no idea what that would do to me. The internet exploded. Some called her brave. Others called her manipulative. Eli's legal team quickly denounced the tape as edited and fraudulent. But the damage was done. A formal lawsuit was filed. Paternity tests were demanded. And just like that, Eli Bishop, the poster child for black success in corporate America, found himself walking into a courtroom. The trial became a media circus. Protesters lined the courthouse steps, some defending Eli, others demanding justice for Liana. The prosecution framed it as a case of exploitation, a powerful man preying on a vulnerable worker. The defense painted Liana as a gold digger with a history of instability and opportunism. But the turning point came when Liana's team subpoenaed internal documents from the cleaning agency. It was discovered that Eli had made private payments to the agency just weeks after Liana revealed her pregnancy, payments labeled as contract terminations. Suddenly, it wasn't just about an affair. It was about cover-ups, coercion, and a concerted effort to silence a woman with nothing but the truth on her side. As the trial dragged on, more women came forward. Former assistants, a yoga instructor, a chauffeur's daughter. They all told similar stories. Brief encounters with Eli Bishop, followed by sudden disappearances and silent settlements. The courtroom atmosphere shifted. This was no longer just about Liana. It became a larger reckoning. A deep dive into how power can be weaponized behind closed doors, even by those we celebrate as role models. Liana gave birth to a baby boy in the middle of the trial. She named him Elijah Jr. A court-ordered DNA test later confirmed what she already knew. Eli was a father. But what the court couldn't agree on was whether Liana had been exploited or simply caught up in a consensual but messy affair. The jury was deadlocked on key charges. Eli avoided criminal charges but was ordered to pay $6 million in damages in a civil settlement. His company's stock plummeted. Several board members resigned. And in the court of public opinion, the man once viewed as untouchable was now permanently stained. Liana declined further interviews. She moved back in with her mother. She said she just wanted peace. The news didn't stop with the DNA confirmation. If anything, that was just the beginning of a new storm. Media outlets exploded with headlines, not just about the baby, but the deeper implications. Billionaire betrayal. Eli Bishop's hidden life exposed. Power, privilege, and paternity. The fall of a tech icon. Cable news networks brought in pundits. Podcasts analyzed the trial minute by minute. Talk shows debated whether Liana was a hero or a hustler. But amid all the noise, one thing became painfully clear. Truth, when inconvenient to power, becomes a dangerous thing. Eli disappeared from the public eye. He claimed he was taking time to heal and focus on family matters. But insiders revealed he was trying to restructure his empire. Brand partnerships were canceled. 2 major tech deals fell through. Celebrities who once posted selfies with him now deleted the photos quietly. Even his philanthropic foundation, which once donated millions to support underprivileged youth, faced scrutiny, with whispers of misused funds and questionable board appointments. Behind closed doors, Liana continued to battle. The civil suit had won her damages, but money wasn't what she truly sought. It was recognition, respect, a voice. She had been mocked online, labeled a seductress, a liar, a problem. She was threatened, harassed, even doxxed. Her family had to relocate. She stopped posting on social media. She declined interviews. But her silence wasn't weakness. It was survival. 1 year after the verdict, another surprise unfolded. A former executive assistant to Eli Bishop, a woman named Candace Moore, filed her own suit. Her claims mirrored Liana's, a pattern of manipulation, financial coercion, and sexual exploitation under the veil of secrecy. But Candace's case came with damning receipts. Emails, photos, even a copy of a non-disclosure agreement Eli had pressured her into signing. Now, the narrative was undeniable. 1, scandal was dismissible. 2, maybe a coincidence. But 3, a pattern. And patterns don't lie. Soon, a group of former employees, mostly women of color, formed a coalition. They named it Silent Hands, Loud Truth. The name referenced the many women in service roles, maids, nannies, assistants, whose voices had long been suppressed by powerful men like Eli Bishop. Their stories began surfacing. Quietly at first, then loudly, a congressional committee took notice. A probe was launched into Eli's hiring practices, corporate conduct, and financial settlements made to employees over the past decade. The investigations revealed a staggering $15 million in unreported payouts. None of them had been disclosed to shareholders. That was securities fraud. Federal charges followed. Eli's mugshot stunned the nation. It wasn't just a scandal anymore, it was criminal. He was charged with multiple counts of financial misconduct, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy to suppress witness testimony. He posted bail, but the damage was irreversible. His name, once chanted in stadiums and quoted in business schools, was now an example of everything wrong with unchecked power. Meanwhile, Liana remained silent. She had no interest in vengeance, only healing. She enrolled in college, started studying early childhood development. She said she wanted to open a daycare someday, not because of the money, but because she believed every child, including hers, deserved to grow up in a world better than the one she came from. Her story inspired some, enraged others. But no one could ignore her now. And then, 1 year after the federal indictment, Eli Bishop returned to court, this time not for a civil case. This was federal, real prison time on the line. His legal team argued that he was being targeted because of his race, that this was a smear campaign orchestrated by jealous rivals and political actors. But the evidence stacked up too high to ignore. Emails, bank transfers, testimonies, NDA after NDA, all painting the same picture. A man who used power not just to build, but to control, to suppress, and to erase. And this time, he couldn't erase the truth. The trial lasted 6 weeks. Every day, the courtroom was packed. Activists, reporters, former employees. Some came to see justice. Others came to mourn the fall of a man they once admired. In the final week of trial, Liana testified again. Calm, composed. She looked Eli in the eye and said, "You treated me like I was disposable, but I'm not disposable. I'm a mother. I'm a woman. And I have a name." The silence in that room was heavy. And when the jury returned, the verdict rang louder than any headline. Guilty on 5 counts. Sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. No possibility of parole for at least 7. The courtroom erupted. Some in cheers, others in stunned silence. Eli was escorted out in cuffs. His face blank. No words. No final statements. Just silence. Outside the courthouse, Liana stood surrounded by her legal team. Cameras flashed. Microphones extended. But she didn't speak to the media. She held her son in her arms and walked away. In the month that followed, Liana wrote a memoir, The House I Cleaned. It became a bestseller within weeks. Not just because of the scandal, but because her story touched something deeper, a recognition that in the shadows of great power often live the forgotten, the invisible, and the unprotected. Eli's company was dismantled, assets sold, his name stripped from the university buildings he once donated to. His foundation was dissolved. But from the ashes of his empire, something new rose: accountability. The Silent Hands, Loud Truth movement grew. More women came forward across industries. New labor protections were proposed. Congress introduced the Liana Green Act, aimed at increasing protections for domestic workers and closing loopholes that allowed predators to buy silence through private settlements. Liana never asked for any of this. She didn't want fame. She didn't want a platform. All she wanted was to tell the truth. But her truth shook the walls of power, and the world listened. Justice, as messy and delayed as it was, had arrived, and it started with a maid. A woman no one saw coming. A woman they thought they could bury. A woman who refused to be silent. Elijah Eli Bishop wasn't sent to just any federal prison. He was transferred to a medium security facility in upstate New York. Gone were the penthouses, the tailored suits, the morning lattes prepared by a personal chef. In their place, cold concrete walls, scheduled phone calls, a cot with a paper-thin mattress, and a number where his name used to be. Prisoners knew who he was. So did the guards. But unlike the world he once ruled, no one bowed in reverence behind those locked doors. The media lost interest after a few weeks. The next scandal took over. The next billionaire. The next controversy. But for Liana, the story never ended. Because raising a child born into the middle of a media firestorm is no fairy tale. She avoided using the settlement money publicly. Her name had already been dragged to the dirt once. She refused to make herself a target again. Instead, she used it quietly. She bought a modest home. She paid off her mother's debts. She hired a small legal team to protect her and her son from any future exploitation. Every time a new documentary wanted to feature her, she said no. Every time a book publisher asked her to write a sequel, she declined. She'd told her story. She had nothing more to prove. But life didn't slow down. The child, Elijah Jr., grew fast. Too fast. And the questions came early. Kids at school recognized his last name. Parents whispered in carpool lines, "Isn't that the boy from the news? Isn't his father?" Liana knew this day would come. So she did what she had always done. She told the truth. Your father made mistakes. Big ones. But you're not his mistakes. You're my miracle. Still, the legacy loomed large. Meanwhile, inside prison, Eli fought a different battle. He tried to position himself as a reformer, claiming to want to help young black men avoid the same mistakes he made. But few were convinced. His cellmates saw through the speeches. They saw the entitlement still pulsing under his carefully chosen words. He started a book club, gave lectures. But it wasn't redemption. It was performance. For Eli, the hardest part wasn't the time. It was the irrelevance, the silence, the fact that no one cared anymore. The world had moved on, but justice had not. The Liana Green Act, signed into law just months after Eli's sentencing, changed lives. It became the most comprehensive labor protection bill for domestic workers in American history. Agencies were now required to report abuse claims. NDAs no longer silence victims in civil cases involving power imbalances. Background checks became mandatory for high-net-worth households hiring live-in staff. What Liana started had grown into something bigger than her, a movement, a legacy that stretched far beyond a scandal. A year later, Silent Hands, Loud Truth held its first national conference. Hundreds of women attended. Maids, housekeepers, caregivers, undocumented workers, survivors of coercion and harassment. Many share their stories for the first time, one after another. They spoke into microphone. I cleaned houses for 30 years. He thought I'd never talk. I signed an NDA when I was 18. I was scared. I'm not scared anymore. And then Liana walked on stage. No spotlight, no press, just her. She didn't deliver a speech. She read a letter to her son. If you ever feel small because of where we came from, remember this. You come from strength. You come from truth. You come from a mother who fought for you before the world ever knew your name. Don't ever let anyone make you feel like you don't belong in this world. You do, and you will make it better. The room stood in silence. Then applause. Then tears. Liana had become the symbol of something rare, not just survival, but quiet, powerful victory. Meanwhile, Eli petitioned for early release, citing good behavior, mental stress, claimed he was a changed man. The judge rejected the request without hesitation. A man who silenced others for years does not get to fast-track his own redemption, the ruling stated. Inside prison, his influence faded further. His lectures stopped drawing interest. His book club dissolved. Even the guards grew indifferent. There was no future press coverage. No comeback story in the making. Eli Bishop had become a cautionary tale, not just about scandal, but about arrogance, about the belief that power could erase accountability. Years passed. Liana started her daycare center. It was called Greenhouse Beginnings, a nod to both her name and her mission, to grow life in safe, nurturing soil. She kept it small, local. She focused on children whose mothers were domestic workers, offering sliding-scale tuition and flexible hours. Every child who walked through her doors received more than education. They received dignity, care, safety. Liana never married, not because she didn't believe in love, but because she knew healing had to come first. And she was still healing, not from Eli, but from a lifetime of being unseen. She poured her heart into her son, taught him chess, took him to museums, made sure he never forgot where he came from and where he was going. Elijah Jr. grew into a quiet, thoughtful boy. Teachers said he had an old soul. He rarely spoke of his father, but one day, during a classroom presentation about role models, he said, "My mom cleaned houses. Then she cleaned up the truth." The room was silent. No applause, just silence. Deep, respectful silence. Years later, a journalist revisited the case for a podcast episode. They requested interviews, reached out to former colleagues, old friends, even tried to contact Liana. She declined. She had nothing left to say. The final lines of the podcast summed it up best. Some stories end with courtroom victories, others with scandals. But some, the rare ones, end with quiet power. Not revenge, not fame, just justice. Real justice. The kind that rebuilds the world after it's been broken. Liana was never seen in public again. She never released another book. She never gave another speech. But she didn't need to. Her story lived in laws, in movements, in every maid who now walked into a house with the confidence of someone who mattered, in every child who now had a safe place to learn and grow. As for Eli, he faded into the background, released after 9 years, older, quieter, forgotten. No more conferences, no more stages, no more power. He tried to re-enter the business world, but found doors closed and reputations burned. He moved to a smaller city, changed his name, and lived out the rest of his days in obscurity. Because the truth, once told, never lets you hide again. And all of it, every shift in policy, every tear in court, every headline that led to reflection, began with a woman who dared to speak. Not because she was loud, but because she was right. Like my video and subscribe my channel for more daily videos.